Childhood ought to be a time of innocence, where dreams are born and imagination is inspired. But for millions of the world's children, life begins with a very bleak outlook. The list of problems facing children seems to grow year on year. So what can we better do to protect the innocence? I'm Mal Fletcher, and this is Edges. According to UNICEF, more than half the people in the world who suffer with extreme poverty are children. Meanwhile, HIV/AIDS continues to decimate families, leaving millions of children to fend for themselves or consigning them to the sex trade. Child mortality, pneumonia and malaria are just three of the major health issues facing children today. Malaria kills 2,800 children in Africa alone every single day. Many of them die simply because they can't get access to proper health care, including immunisation. It's been said that education is the transmission of civilization. Yet according to the UN, there are still more than 117 million children in the world who are out of school. Now we know that 39 million of those come from conflict-affected fragile states, but that still leaves a huge number that come from relatively stable, even developed nations who are getting no education. Meanwhile, Save the Children tells us that there are more than 1 million children in prisons around the world, 90% of them for very trivial offences. And every year, something like 2 million children become victims of human trafficking, which is the modern equivalent of the slave trade. Many of these kids will end up in pornography or prostitution or forced labour or even guerrilla armies. Sending children to war is a crime under international law, but there are still 250,000 child soldiers in the world. Many of these young warriors, as young as 7 or 8, come from very poor backgrounds, and many have been abandoned by their parents. Many will be killed in action. Others will die just because there's no medical treatment for their injuries. And those that are left will often suffer deep psychological scars that may never heal.
So what about the Western world? Children living places like here are facing a whole different set of issues. I've come to the centre of London to find out what they are.
I think the main problem is the fact that so many young children are having babies before they're really adult themselves, and that's why the whole system is sort of breaking down.
There's a lot of peer pressure to go out and probably maybe actually get older, like maturer before your age.
I think lack of acceptance in big cities. Internet, communications, ability to access information that's outside the parental control, outside the home.
I think it's quite interesting to see how kids react with the media and sort of how they should look.
Different cultures, religions, money.
They need more help, people need to back them more, give more support.
So it's clear from the people I've spoken to today that children in the Western world are facing a whole set of adult problems, from bullying to abuse, materialism to violence. What everyone said today was that children now need protecting more than ever before.
If you're living in a wealthy, developed nation, all this may seem like an entire world away. But our kids face real pressures too, not the least of which relate to their health. Take smoking, for example. Smoking is the leading cause of preventable death in the Western world. It kills more than 500,000 people in Europe every year. And yet in many places, more and more young people are taking up smoking. Obesity is another major health issue facing our kids today. According to the World Health Organization, obesity is one of the great health challenges of our time. In the UK, 1 in every 10 6-year-olds is obese. And some experts believe that if trends continue the way they are, more than half the children in England could be obese by the year 2020. Obesity in childhood can lead to all kinds of major health issues later in life. Issues like heart disease, type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. And in the short term, of course, obesity often leads to bullying. Of course, bullying is a problem in its own right. It can take many forms, from pushing or shoving to full-on physical intimidation. And these days we even have so-called cyberbullying, where kids post vicious messages on their mobile phones or put rumours about other kids on the internet. And then there's the so-called happy slapping attacks. Of course, the name is totally misleading. There's nothing happy about them. Basically, one person is attacked while others stand around taking photos or videos on their mobile phones, and many are posted on the internet.